Hi everyone, this is Yingxin. Today's topic is about free will，自由意志。我们是不是有自由意志？今天呢，我和我的女儿呢来讨论这个事情。我女儿呢她是一个瑜伽老师，然后她又是个 astrologer，她又是一个艺术家。So she is an astrologer, a yoga teacher, and an artist. So what do you think?
So we're discussing free will, right? So what's your question about free will?
Do we have a free will?
Do we have it? Okay. I think that there are a lot of factors that play into free will, and I think that we have a percentage of it, but I don't think we entirely have it. I think that there's a lot of things at play. There's the energy of the planets, there's the energy of just energy moving around us at all times. And so when we really get into our life and we look deeper within ourselves, I think we can build a lot of things that make us feel like we have free will in response to what's going on in the world. But of course, everything moving around us is moving in pattern with what the universe needs at that time.
I see. So you are saying is that through whether it's cultivation or whether it's like just understanding better of the rules or patterns of how the universe move around, or is that understanding also better the psyche of the whole society and the people around us, that we will have better control about our emotions and about our life.
Yeah, I think so. I think that better understanding our own patterns inside of us can lead us to understand what's at play with the patterns in the universe. I think it's difficult because as you get older, you start to understand more about patterns. Like we have this concept of time in our life. But it is true that with time and being on this planet and being a human, we get to better understand how we're at play with the universe, right? So as we learn that and as we learn ourselves more deeply, even though we have methods of understanding patterns in the universe, that actually all just leads to us understanding our interior. But as we understand that, then we can better understand how we respond to things. There are a lot of things at play. There's also the body, right? There's a lot of things that are held inside of us that we are coming to understand and we may not fully understand from the start. And that stuff takes a lot of time and a lot of hard work to sort of ease into. There are just so many things that you sort of have to contend with as a human.
When you say contend, you mean is that in many ways surrender to, like a lot of the things, especially, of the external factors that we don't have control. And also is that, like you are saying, it takes a lot of time to even actually deep inside us, patterns that we have.
Yeah, I think that you do have some control in terms of your response to things outside of you. I think that people who grow up in more turmoil might have a harder time exerting free will over how they respond to things. But these things are all learnable and practicable. And, we can train our nervous systems and we can work with ourselves to better understand how to be better at responding to things in this world. Like it's really hard being a human, it's a strange experience that we're all in. And so as you build this relationship with yourself, that's what it's really all about, right? Is building this relationship with yourself so that you can better respond to the things that happen. So you have yourself when things are happening around you. Those things we may not be able to control as much, but you do have some control over things. And if horrible situations are constantly happening to you and you have an option to leave them, than you would, right? Like there are just some situations that you have a little more free will and other ones that you don't.
But isn't that actually is that even though, when we look at the world, and it seems like is that, we have external people, you have your children, your husband, your wife, and friends. But in many ways, isn't that actually all of these people are more or less projected out actually from ourselves? So in many ways, we are actually dealing ourselves rather than actually there's really an external world.
There is an external world, right? Like, so there's a level of spiritual bypassing that happens if you do consider every single thing a projection of you, which it is, right? Like our view of another person in our life is a complete projection from our brain of who we think that person is, right? But at the same time, that, that gets a little bit sticky because you do have people in your life, right? There are people in your life. You can have great relationships with people in your life that make things so much easier and make things a lot more fun. But at the same time, like I think there's a level of shadow to what you're saying where, not everything is entirely a projection, right? If you're viewing from a purely spiritually elitist way, then you're seeing everything of like, this is a projection. This is, for me to learn. This is whatever. But at the same time, like the most spiritual person is the person that is able to see everything simply, right? They're not considering all the projections. They're not considering anything. They just know that this thing is what it is, right? So you can have these relationships and you can see other people and they can be people to you. They can have qualities that you're technically projecting, right? But you can still enjoy them. Like there's a human experience in all of this, even when we think about spirituality. I think that's what you're trying to say with the idea of projections, right?
Yes, yes. So what you are saying is that it's basically saying is that, we can actually trust more of our intuition and also developing our awareness. Because when you say somebody who can be fully aware, it means is that the person really developed a very, very good awareness of their surroundings, of the people around them, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's actually a being who actually in many ways is they have very good understanding of people, compassionate and understanding, very intuitive, and and I felt is that in my life I find that I'm kind of most of the time I'm very, very optimistic, but also I notice is that when I am projecting out of the qualities of the person, the better part of the person, then I felt that, not only my own life changed, but also actually affected the other person's behavior too.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that maybe that's the optimism coming into play and skewing things. I think that our projection of things can skew our perspective, and that's why you would think that there's a shift in other people when you view them in a certain way. But actually, I think from what I'm hearing, that practice of awareness and being okay with people and just, not constantly thinking about our own projections of them and being aware that we are projecting our own stuff on them probably constantly, then that is like enough to just see relationships change because you're not viewing it hyper focused on anything, right?
Yeah, but isn't that reality in many ways is kind of like quote and unquote, like a game or play? And there's really, how to say is that we all know is that in many, many ways, that no one actually really able to change someone unless that they want to change. So in many ways is that, how to say is that, so in many ways is really is about is that, what kind of life experience that you want, rather than through any kind of projection to trying to change anyone. So in many ways, it comes down to, even from this, I feel is like, we don't really have free will. We can only is that, playing our role in a way such that, our life is better and we are not, being affected. And in many ways, playing into a role that someone else want you to play.
I think that that is also like, I know personally that me and you are very different. I know that you're more empathic and I'm somebody that can not absorb other people's things as much. So I feel like when you say, it's your part to sort of not take in what other people are projecting out, right? And in my head, I'm thinking it's my role to not project out what I want from other people. Like, we kind of have a switched perspective, which is interesting. I just wanted to mention that first. But yeah, I mean, I think that a part of being human, I do believe that, yes, we are like all players in this game. We're all actors in this play, to an extent. I think that that's a view of things that can benefit people sometimes. But also, I think that, like, you're here for the human experience, right? It's okay if you get swept up in the drama sometimes and, you come back out and you're like able to sort of zoom out, right? Like, I feel like the zooming in and the zooming out is really where the spiritual experience comes into play once you're sort of combining your human life and combining your spiritual life. You're putting them together and you're able to sort of go in and go out and understand things in different ways and be able to have a wider perspective so that you're not projecting so much elsewhere and you're also not taking in other people's projections of you, right? Like, there's just so many things at play. But in the end, it's really like, chances are you're not doing much wrong, you know? You're exerting free will when you have free will. When there's options to be had, you're making decisions, you're taking your options, hopefully based around your heart. But I also feel like people get driven otherwise when, when they feel like they're not making decisions from their hearts, and things will sort of guide them back gently, right? But I think that there's just so much, there are so many different things. You have free will sometimes, I feel like, and other times things are a little bit harder. Sometimes there's energy, there's planets moving, there are things happening that you can't necessarily control, but you can learn to work with. Nothing is unworkwithable, and humans are also workwithable, right? When you talk about relationships and projections, like, what kind of relationships are we talking about, right? You have a lot of options in different kinds of relationships to sort of work things out. And that's a whole thing, right? Learning how to communicate with people. Even if we're actors in a play, can we learn how to communicate and, play well with others? Can we learn how to sort of allow our soul to do the things it needs to do, and then see somebody else's soul doing the things that they need to do and be okay with that, and make compromises and see what happens, right? Like, that's all part of that. There's certain relationships you can't really have that in, and yet you can decide how you feel about them. You can decide what you focus on. You can decide what you're thinking about, how you're moving your life. I feel like there's little decisions you can make in your life that can shift things dramatically in the long run. Like, meditating 5 minutes a day for a long time, right, could amount to really big things. Like, there's just these little things that you have free will over, you know?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I really like your attitude that actually is that, we coming here for a human experience, and then, you take this very balanced way, and accepting of, the change that you have no control, but at the same time, taking a positive and active role, about the things that you can take. I think that we already have quite a long conversation about this subject, so we don't want the video be too long. So maybe today, this session, we end here. What do you think?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Now I think we do another